Thanks. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for coming. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Kelmanson. I'm the new IMF Mission Chief for Latvia. It's a pleasure to meet you all and to be here in Riga. We have a short statement, a concluding statement, which I don't know if you've yet all got in hard copy, but if you haven't, we'll be handing around at the moment. I'd like to welcome you all here today. It's my pleasure to meet you all. Before starting, can I ask, we have a small form, just an attendance thing, just maybe you can fill in your names, just so that we know who attended and who was here today, so that we can be sure to invite you all again. My team and I have been here for a week. It's been a short fact-finding mission as part of our routine engagement with Latvia. But for me it was far from routine, as this was my first ever trip to Latvia and my first ever trip to Riga, and I've had a great time here. You all have a beautiful city. I haven't yet seen any of the countryside. I hope to do that on another trip. And not only did all the people I meet here treat me very well, but I was also, as I understand it, very lucky with the weather. So the weather even treated me well. And I even managed to get a little bit of time off over the weekend to wander around and see your central market. So who could ask for more? We will be back again, as I said, this was a short visit. We'll be back again in the early summer to carry out our regular Article 4 consultation, which is our annual health check of the economy, the Latvian economy, after which we will write a report and discuss that report with our board and look forward to its publication. As for this trip, we've had a productive set of discussions with the authorities and with some private parties. And as is the usual practice, we've prepared a concluding statement setting out our main findings. The statement will be posted online from our headquarters in Washington as soon as possible in a few hours. At the moment, they're still fast asleep. And let me now maybe take a few moments to read out our assessment, which, as I said, will be available online shortly and which you already have in hand. I'd then be happy to spend a few minutes to take some of your questions. Latvia continues to make steady progress. Unemployment continues to fall and now stands at just under 10%, half its crisis peak. The current account deficit remains modest, and inflation is picking up slowly towards the euro area target. While overall economic sentiment shows little change, consumer confidence has reached levels not seen since the crisis. The supply of bank lending, though still shrinking, shows some signs of stabilising. Growth appears to be accelerating. This is despite somewhat softer growth earlier in the year, and production at a large steelmaker remaining below capacity. The acceleration is being driven by a pickup in private consumption, supported by strong real wage growth and also by investment, in part associated with the use of EU funds. As a result, growth is likely to reach around 3% this year and be somewhat higher still next. The medium-term outlook is favourable, but there are risks. The favourable outlook reflects the strong domestic demand and a less adverse external environment. However, risks remain tilted to the downside. Prolonged stagnation in the euro area, or Russia could undermine growth prospects, and a deepening of geopolitical tensions could adversely affect both the real and financial sectors. In such an environment, there is a need for continued vigilance, adequate buffers, and prudent policy making. Maintaining competitiveness remains vital. Both public and private sectors have a role to play. The government should press ahead with reforms in justice, education, health and infrastructure. Consistent and rigorous implementation of the new insolvency framework will be important to ensure its credibility and promote new lending. While wage growth and higher minimum wages can support domestic demand, raise living standards and reduce inequality, if wage growth is allowed to exceed productivity gains, then competitiveness will suffer. The 2016 budget is broadly appropriate. It strikes a balance between delivering the needed fiscal consolidation and supporting growth, while being broadly consistent with Latvia's own fiscal rules, its European Union fiscal commitments. Measures to enhance revenues are welcome, including not reducing the PIT, introducing the so-called solidarity tax, and others to broaden the tax base. This should be complemented by further efforts to tackle the shadow economy and deficiencies in tax collection. Furthermore, efforts should be made to shift the burden of to shift the revenue burden towards property taxes, and more is needed to address inequality, including enhancing the guaranteed minimum income benefits. At the same time, it will be important to ensure the efficiency of public spending, informed by a review of expenditures. The banking system remains well capitalised and liquid. The moderation of growth in non-resident deposits is welcome. Nevertheless, this sector should continue to be subject to vigilant supervision. In this context, it is appropriate that minimum capital and liquidity requirements on NRD specialised banks are higher than for others. Continued resolute implementation and enforcement of AML-CFT regulations and requirements will be important in mitigating reputational risks to the ultimate benefit of the system overall. In this regard, initiatives that encourage offshoring should be carefully weighed against these risks. The IMF team is grateful for the generous hospitality of the Latvian authorities and would like to thank all of our interlocutors in government, the Bank of Latvia and the private sector for a set of constructive and fruitful discussions. So that's the end of our formal concluding statement. I'd be happy to take a few questions if you have any.
Yes, Carl Stroich from Latvian television. Well, during the session of this state budget of next year, there was a lot of discussions and a lot of criticism about this solidarity tax, and a lot of entrepreneurs said that this particular budget do not foresee the growth and do not give the right conditions for the growth to the next year, and the level of the shadow economy will increase. Well, how can you comment this fears of the entrepreneurs?
Well, I think that we thought that the 2016 budget is broadly appropriate, and that it strikes a good balance between delivering the necessary fiscal consolidation which Latvia needs to undertake, while also supporting growth. And the other dimension is that I think it's also consistent with both Latvia's fiscal discipline law and also its EU commitments. So I think we believe that it strikes an appropriate balance in that, in terms of supporting the economy. The economy, as I said, growth is accelerating at the moment, and we expect to reach around 3% this year and somewhat higher still next year. Efforts to address the shadow economy are clearly important, and I think that's something that we've discussed with the authorities and we'll discuss again with them in due course in our next Article 4 as well.
Do you see well, how can you characterize the will to fight with the shadow economy? Is it enough, well, about this, let's say, how much can we take out the money from the shadow economy? Well, is there some kind of a border when, well, to get out money from the shadow economy is becoming much harder?
I think the discussions that we had, without going into the details of individual meetings, I think that the discussions we had with the authorities on the shadow economy, to my mind, were positive. It's clear that they are focused on this issue. It's clear that the authorities have a number of dimensions in which they're seeking to address this, and I think that they are already making progress. I think there's more progress that should be made and that can be made. So I don't think we're yet at a point where you can't make further gains. And I think with them focusing on the policies that they're exploring and implementing them, I think further progress can be made.
Well, I understand. You said that, well, you already spoke about this 3% GDP growth forecast for the next year. Well, in your opinion, how realistic it is if we keep in mind that we still have these problems with Russia, and unfortunately the impact of the problems in Russia was quite well in Africa. So, well, I mean, is this forecast of the 3% growth in the next year, well, isn't it too optimistic, in your opinion?
Actually, what I said was that we expect growth in this year to be around 3% and to be somewhat higher next year. We believe it's a realistic forecast. We've been encouraged by the pickup in domestic demand, which has been in recent months, which has been important in supporting growth this year, and we see there's some forward momentum in that for next year. In part, that was supported by quite strong wage growth. That's an issue which will need to be looked at by the authorities and kept an eye on to avoid strong wage growth outstripping productivity growth. You'll need to make sure that the authorities will need to make sure that they focus also on maintaining the competitiveness of the Latvian economy by ensuring that productivity gains move in lockstep with wage growth. We looked at the issue of Russia and the geopolitical tensions at the time of our last Article 4, and there clearly is some link. But I think we're comfortable that that our forecasts are achievable. We will also look at revising those. They will be revised in the context of our next round of the World Economic Outlook. At the time of the spring meeting, the IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington. And we will come probably sometime in the early summer to undertake our Article 4 consultation, which will be an opportunity for us to look again at our forecasts for 2016 and going forward. So we'll be able to make any revisions at that time. But at this moment, I think we're reasonably comfortable.
Minimum capital standards in the local banks. Are those standards high enough, considering that the retail banks have about twice the level of capital as the resident banks? Even if they have a higher minimum standard, retail banks are carrying enormous amounts of capital.
I think we think that the approach taken by the authorities is appropriate. It's something that we will look again, as I said, in more depth at the time of the next Article 4. But at this time, we don't see any particular need or any particular changes necessary. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to meeting you again. Hopefully you can come back when we're here and the weather will be even nicer in the summer. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers.